Hi there, folks. Back again for another video. In this one, managed to get my hands on the new books for Warhammer The Old World, and just wanted to kind of talk about the books and my sort of plans, I think, going forward. They're quite nice books, as it happens. I think the photography in them is great. I think the artwork looks really nice as well. They definitely went through and kind of looked back at artwork from the past as a guide for where you needed to go when it came to developing the books and sort of making them approachable for, old world fans and the like. There's a really nice selection of stuff in here that wouldn't look out of place in the classic books. And a fair amount of it actually looks like it could actually have just been lifted from those, to be honest. But there's a really good mix of different things in here in terms of artwork and lore and everything as well. Obviously, this doesn't cover the lore that a lot of people will be familiar with from the sort of end times period. But this kind of carries through the storyline of the old the old armies and sort of where they came to when it came before this sort of period here. So for anyone who doesn't know, the idea behind the old world is that it's sort of their Horus heresy, I suppose, when it came to the Warhammer world, set in this particular region of what we know of the Warhammer world, so the old world, with a focus on specific factions throughout that as well. The idea is this is a time of turmoil within the Empire where there's various emperors sort of vying for control and everything like that as well, in addition to a sort of burgeoning Bretonnian kingdom over there to the west. But then there's all the brouhaha in the mountains and everything as well between the dwarves and the goblins and everything as well. So they've really gone through and done quite a lot of stuff when it comes to sort of fleshing out the storyline that you're sort of going to be diving into when it comes to the old world. One of the big things is that they're not necessarily doing anything in terms of sort of chaos demons and the like. It's very much more sort of the growth of the chaos threat in the north. So Kislev's still obviously a mighty province and defends against the incursions from the north, but it's not quite as deadly as it will be later on during the time of Magnus the Pious and the like as well. But I think they're doing a pretty nice job with this, and it gives them some room to tell different stories and sort of fill in the gaps a little bit. Where things were with the end times, obviously, it was very much a minute to midnight type thing, whereas this allows them to take a step back and start to tell lots of interesting stories with the different armies and stuff as they sort of develop them and fill in the gaps based on what was known in the older editions of Warhammer Fantasy. It's a nice one actually that I think will be very fun for those people who like their old world lore and are looking for something to sink their teeth back into. A lot of it is very familiar to those that have played Warhammer before. The War of the Beard's still there, and there's still the fights between the various elements of the Empire, and the orcs and goblins are still the orcs and goblins and everything like that. I think a lot of the change has come in some of the other factions that I suppose you consider a little bit more fringe in older editions. So I think Bretonnia has been sort of updated and tweaked a lot. Tomb Kings as well have been tweaked, which is quite nice to see. I really like that they're focusing in a lot more on the kind of border princes and Tilia and stuff, and I'm really hoping that we're going to see things like the Dogs of War and Tilia and stuff like that added into the mix to kind of give you another reason to sort of look towards that portion of the old world. As I say, I mean, the artwork is gorgeous throughout, and as somebody who is a massive Warhammer Fantasy fan, having a book like this is nice to have back effectively. There's nothing to say that you couldn't just crack out your old armies and start playing them in 8th edition or 6th or 7th, whichever one you like the most. But there's always something nice about having a new book to kind of sink your teeth into and see how things have developed and grown since it was last on the tabletop. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting in the lore section, they talked about Kislev in a little bit more detail here. Now, obviously, Kislev and Cathay were two elements of the old world that were previewed early on in the process of Warhammer the Old World, but they don't necessarily seem to have done anything with them, to be honest, and there doesn't seem to be any sign of that happening anytime soon, which is strange. I understand why they went for Bretonnians and Khemri, because they were the armies that were left out by the switch over to Age of Sigmar, but I suppose it would have been cool to have Kislev and Cathay leading the way and having some fun there. They're not even on the roster of armies that are going to be supported, which is strange. So maybe they've gone back on the back burner while they play around with models and ranges that they already have access to. That's the Battle of Skull Pass art there, which is very nice. That was my re-entering into the Worlds of Warhammer box set with my friend Tom. Very cool. But yeah, as well as all the new lore and stuff that they've built in here, and ways that they're looking to take that. There's a good amount of space given over to the rules, basically. Let's have a look. I mean, you're pretty much going through to... There we go. There's all the art. So that is rules. For those people who've played 7th and 8th, a lot of the mechanics will be fairly similar. Some of the big changes have come in terms of the magic phase has gone, so you don't do magic anymore in one phase. Instead, it's spread out throughout the various phases that you run through. They've cleaned up a lot more to do with formations and the way that you build your armies, and sort of tweaked things a little bit to make it so that it's fun and easy to dive into the game without feeling like you're going to get bogged down, I suppose would be the case, with sort of minutiae. I mean, there is a lot more in the game of that type of stuff, I suppose, but no more than, say, probably the Horus Heresy, I reckon, especially with the universal special rules and things like that. I think one of the interesting things, actually, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that really blew my mind was the way that you can do the formation changes and stuff. I think it's quite nice. So you can go between close order and open order to get benefits for moving and stuff, which is quite good. They've put in a lot more about skirmish movement and stuff, although that's something that's kind of tied into the advanced rules and not necessarily something that's a big part of many armies, to be honest. If you're looking to play things like goblins or wood elves, that's where you start to see a lot more of the stuff come in for the different formations and stuff on that front. Don't really get it with the armies like the dwarves that I've been looking at as well, but good stuff with magic. I think they've done a good job there. It stops magic being a massive part of the game, but also makes it kind of fun to play with, so you don't have to sit there while someone just goes through their magic phase. It's kind of sprinkled throughout, and all the magic spells are attuned to particular phases that make sense, so you're not going to forget about them. So if you cast something to help you with combat at the start of the game in 8th, you might forget about it. You won't do that here because they've kind of worked everything in, which I think is quite nice. The other thing that was quite interesting as well was the way that combat works. One of the things that was quite interesting about that I couldn't necessarily remember being a thing in 8th, but I may be wrong, was that now when you fight, you fight based on your initiative order, and if you charge, you get a benefit to your initiative, sort of plussing up to 3, I think it is, maybe up to 4 in some cases, to allow you to go first. So there's a great impetus on being the one who makes the charge, getting into the right position to make a charge. The other thing that was quite interesting is the way that combats are now done, and again, you have to remind me if this is something that I completely missed from previous editions, but I didn't think this was the case. But now, when you fight, it's very simple. The first rank is always the fighting rank, and even if that rank extends beyond the enemy you're fighting, so say maybe there's only 3 or 4 horsemen in front of you, but you've got here you go. But you've got your full fighting rank. Those are the models that do the combat. So they'll be the ones fighting against these horsemen that have charged in here. The thing that's really interesting, though, as well, is that this is your fighting rank. Obviously, this is a regular unit. It's not one with spears, so you don't get any sporting attacks or anything like that. But say they had the initiative and they killed, say, 4 of those models, right? You put those to the side and you use that as a counter to remind you that when you actually get to fight back, you fight minus the number of models that were in front of you previously. So they killed 4, you get to attack back with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Yeah, in this case, I think there's 9 in that unit. Either way, they get to fight back against those enemies because it's counted as those 4 being killed. And even though you take from the back and these models have stepped forward into the breach, as it were, they're too busy stepping over the bodies of the dead to make the attacks against the enemy. So whereas before it was very much a thing of, you just make 5-man units. Well, 5. The front rank used to just be 5 models, didn't it? Really, you'd had a standard bearer, a musician, a champion, 2 warriors, and then a back rank behind them of 5 that would fight alongside you. And then you'd have more maybe if you were playing with spearmen and everything like that, right? Now there's more of an impetus on having larger footprint regiments. So I've seen a lot of people with 6-man frontages. Maybe you go even larger than that. There are stipulations that you can't have X amount of models in a rank, depending on how deep you are and all this kind of thing. So they have tweaked some things on that front, but it's really interesting to see that sort of thing thrown into the mix to kind of make it so that you don't have. So there's added lethality, but then there's also ways to take away from that as well. And again, there's more impetus on you being the one to make the charge. Because if you make the charge, you get to strike first, you have to hit the enemy harder, and they don't get to hit you back as hard, which I think is really interesting. Obviously, all that will flow through into how the armies actually come together as they reveal more about them. But it was an interesting one. Obviously, your charts and things are back as well, and things are a little bit harder to kill, I'd say, than normal. The other thing they've done is they've done the combat results is more or less calculated the same as it was before, but when you move away from a unit, you break, and there are sort of various ways to do it. So this is the sort of breakdown of this breakdown thing. So if the result of the natural roll is higher than the unit's leadership, the unit breaks and flees. So that's the normal thing that would happen. You turn around, you flee away a number of inches, depending on movement, etc., and dice rolls, whatever. Then you've got the result of the natural roll is equal to or lower than the unit's leadership, but the modifier result is still higher than the unit's leadership. The unit falls back in good order. So this is where you drop back and then you reform, right? And then the other one is give ground, where you literally just step back 2 inches or something directly away from the opponent, and then you get to fight again, basically, depending on the response that the opponent has to the break test. But it's an interesting one because it means that there's a really fun mix of ways that combats can play out now. You've got that added lethality, or at least a balance of lethality, and then throwing in some other bits and pieces with the way that morale now works means that if you get the right charges at the right time, you could break units, you could shatter them, send them fleeing, and chase them down and get them off the board before you even know it, really. It was interesting seeing some of the battle reports and stuff that have come up about the game, and it seems like a lot of people are getting into it and having some fun. Again, it feels very much like classic Warhammer, but with a few tweaks here and there to kind of make it feel a little bit more modern, I suppose. There's a lot of touches in here that remind me of historical war games, especially the way that people fall back and that kind of stuff. I think they've done a really nice job on that front to kind of bring in some of those mechanics, I think. There's obviously one of the big things they've done, they've added in the universal special rules again, so there's a huge section of the book dedicated to that, where you can flick through and basically just find the rules that mean the most to you. So, for example, Veterans one that Dwarves can take, can reroll failed leadership tests there, which is good. What was another one that they had? Shield wall. Once per game during a turn in which it was charged, a unit with a special rule that is arrayed in close order formation and is equipped with and chooses to use shields may give ground rather than fall back in good order. So if you'd normally have taken the give ground result, you can instead just step back 2 inches and take it as a hit, which I think is quite nice. And lots of other stuff in there as well, which I'm sure will be very interesting to people as they sort of get it worked into their armies. What was the other thing that they had that was quite cool? Anyway, we'll find out later when we go through the other stuff. So yeah, I think they've done an interesting job with the rules. The proof will be in the pudding, obviously, but it's a decent book, I would say, that has about the same weight as the old Warhammer books, but they've done a really fun job of kind of tweaking things and making it feel a lot more modern, as I say. Still a lot of the old classic bits and pieces in there, which is always good to see, but I like that they've got everything contained effectively within this one tome. So if you are somebody who is looking to play different types of games and all sorts of different things at different points levels, they've kind of catered to you. All the models still from the older ranges, which is good to see, and it'd be nice to see more stuff come back in plastic and metal and everything over the next little while. We just had the reveal of the Orcs being the third faction for the old world, which is fun. I can't wait till my Dwarves pop up once again. I've got that model, one of my favourites. And obviously be very interested to see where they go with the new releases and the models and what's available from Forge World and everything else in between. But yeah, I think they've done a really nice job with the book, and there's a few things with the rules that I'm still trying to get my head around, but otherwise I think they've managed to nail it. There are actually scenarios and stuff in here as well. There's an interesting thing about, there's rules for army mustering, obviously, which is quite cool, and allies and mercenaries. There's all the different scenarios, which have a historical context, but then are also just a game type. So the Drakwad Forest incident can be played as a historical engagement, or it could just be the meeting engagement, if that's what you prefer. There's also some fun stuff. The Battle for the Pass is still here, which is cool. The other thing that I quite liked is that they've got stuff about campaign battles and narrative battles in there as well, which I thought was quite nice. But yeah, it's a decent book, and I managed to pick this up from my friendly local gaming store. Magic is also very cool. They've done that kind of thing where you roll to see what spells you get, but you also get a signature spell and everything as well. They're not spread into the colleges like they were previously. They're now just listed as various types. You've got battle magic, demonology, dark magic, elementalism, high magic for your high elves, illusion for your wood elves, a little bit of necromancy, wild magic for your orcs. And then there's a series of kind of common magical weapons and items and standards and everything else in between. Again, if you're someone who's familiar with Warhammer in general, this won't be a massive surprise to you. And to be honest, if you've got 8th edition and you've still got 8th edition armies, why bother changing too much, I suppose? But if you're somebody who's looking to play within the new rules and have some fun with that, I think this is a pretty good book. I mean, this one set me back £40, but you could probably get a little bit cheaper if you wanted. I'd like that it has the reference stuff at the back, so you can easily check through things, which is always good to see. And it actually has page numbers for stuff. So if you are reading through Roll to Hit Wound and Make Armor Saves, there's actually a page reference back into the book, so you can go and check that out. I think it's a nice little touch. And a good index. Always need one of those. But yeah, that's the first of the big blue books, replacing the red one. The rule book seems pretty good. I've had a look through the rules. They all seem fun. A few things that I'll need to test in the fires of battle, as it were. But otherwise, a pretty nice little book. And I'm going to dive into a little more of the lore in the future, I think, as well, which would be very cool to see. In addition to that, we obviously had the other two books that came out, and these are the only two that I need at the moment. Well, technically, I don't even need both of these. There's the Ravening Horde, which deals with your evil armies, and there's Forces of Fantasy, which deals with your good armies, and they are based on old books that were available in previous editions. The Ravening Hordes one, I'll just go through first, covers your evil factions, as I said, and inside here you're going to find rules for the Orc and Goblin tribes, the Warriors of Chaos, the Beastmen Bray herds, and the Tomb Kings of Khemri. There is a little bit of an update on the Forces of Evil and sort of where they fit into things. And then there's a good breakdown for each of the different factions in more detail than you'd think for something like this, which I greatly appreciate. So we'll just use the Orcs and Goblins one as an example here. So you get a little bit of background on the Orcs and Goblins tribes and what they are. You get a set of basic rules for the composition of your army, telling you what you can and can't take in various numbers and what percentage needs to be of what, which ties back into the core rules anyway. Then you get things broken down into characters. See, as you got some there, lots of them for the Orcs and Goblins, obviously. Your basic infantry. So you've got your Black Orcs there. Your basic Orc mob too, which is good. There's lots of ways for you to tinker with units as well now, which I think is quite nice. Buying the special stuff for their special rules and all sorts of different things. So you can theme armies quite well. I think it's good. Same stat lines and everything that you'd normally expect with the classic Warhammer stat lines, sorry, is what I should say. Not the same stat lines. I'm sure things have changed. But yeah, you get all of your additions in here, including everything that's going to be coming up as well. So it's basically your one-stop shop for everything you need for your army. And you can play the game just with what's available here. Again, the artwork's lovely in this. I really like what they've done. Then you get magic items, set of special rules. So those that are very specific to them, but then you'll be able to find all the other universal special rules in the main rulebook. Additional spells and magical options if you require them. And then there's always a little bit of a gallery showing off some of the models that you can use to make your forces. And the same goes for the other ones in that book. But my main focus is on the Forces of Fantasy, because I'm going to be playing as my Dwarves, most likely, as I talked about in a previous video. So once again, works in the same way, but the Forces of Fantasy book covers the Dwarven Mountain Holes, the Empire of Man, the Kingdom of Bretonnia, the Wood Elf Realms, and the High Elf Realms. The other armies that were available in Warhammer Fantasy Battles in the past are going to be serviced via free PDFs, which you'll be able to download and follow through and read. They are legacy, legends armies, so not viable for Warhammer World tournaments or official tournaments. But if that is the case, why would you bother going to those if you're playing Skaven or Vampires or whatever? Just have some fun and play at local tournaments instead. Clearly the best way to go, I would say. But yeah, so some good stuff for all the different armies there. Just have fun with your friends at local clubs and all sorts of things like that. Dwarven Mountain Hold. So this is the one that I've been looking at in particular. It's a nice little piece of art from the 8th edition army book that was very short-lived, but it was a fun read nonetheless. Had some fun with that one. So you get a little bit of background on the dwarves at this period of time. You get a breakdown of how the army comes together, and it's got a lot of the stuff there that you'd imagine it would do for the dwarves. They seem to have ticked off a lot of the The key things that dwarves need. Dwarf lords still work in similar ways from the past. They've got the oath stone that you can use to kind of like challenge your opponents. I really like the ancestral grudge rule in there as well, which is good to kind of spread your hatred amongst the forces. You've got your shield bearers if you want to go like that round. You've got the Anvil of Doom with its various spells there bound to it. Dwarven runesmiths, the Slayers of Legend, so your demon and dragon slayers. Your dwarven engineers, they're still there. Your classic dwarven warriors, that can be dropped into your games. The dwarven special rule that used to be there, which is the drilled one, I think that's the one where you can march past enemies if they're close to you. That's now a points upgrade, so you can pay the extra to drop that into the mix, which I think is quite nice. And they again work very similarly. You've got your longbeards, who are always the best. Definitely want to have longbeards in your army if you can. Quarrelers and thunderers, so you can have crossbows and rifles. The rangers, so your bugman style rangers are there as well. Drop them into the mix. Your hammerers, which still work as royal guards, that you'll be familiar with. They can be the ones that all can take challenges rather than the character having to do so. Your iron breakers. Your Iron Drakes, which were a new addition in 8th, but they're back as well. The Miners, your Slayers, who can be a big mix of Troll and Giant. So you can have like a unit of champions, which I think is really cool. The Gyrocopters still there, alongside the Gyro Bomber. Everything that was basically out before is still there. Bolt throwers, grudge throwers, cannons, organ guns, flame cannons. The runic items follow the same rules as they always have. You have the rule of 3, so you can't have more than 3 runes on an axe. The rule of 4, no rune not intended for that item, so you can't have hand weapons on engineer runes, etc. The rule of pride, no 2 runes may be identical, which is good. The rule of jealousy, each master rune can only be chosen once per army. You can't have more than 1, and the rule of duplication, which is always good. So there are certain runes that you can use to bolster your forces, and bolster your weapons in different ways. So yeah, you got weapon runes, you got armor runes, you got your talismanic runes, which are the same. The master rune, the rune of spell breaking, is still there, which is good to see. Your sort of dispel scroll, which is nice. You have your standard runes as well, which you can drop onto your standards. And then you have your engineering runes, which are the ones that you're going to attach to your cannons. And then you have some special rules there, similar to other armies as well. So you've got the Dwarven Mountain Hold special rule, which is good. And then a gallery showing off more of the models, which is nice. And some good stuff in there as well. What's quite nice about everything, and I thought it was quite good in the Dwarven set, is that you can make a very good thematic list. More stuff will obviously come out in arcane journals in the future to help these armies, to make them feel more unique, but everything you need to play is in this book, which I think is great. And you're probably going to get enough out of this anyway without having to buy the arcane journals. The arcane journals, though, are only about 15 quid, so it's not a huge outlay for some extra special rules, named characters and stuff. The other army that I have been very tempted by is the High Elves. I think I maybe talked about this as well in the past, but I've been very tempted by the idea of doing a High Elf army and doing it about the White Lions of Thrace. And they've put a really cool thing in where you can actually sort of theme your force around that. So you can get this thing called Elven Honours. So let's go to Elven Honours, which is towards the back. And this is where you kind of theme your force. There's lots of stuff for the elves. So there is actually an Elven Honour. There it is. The Thracian Hunter. I'm going to say Thracian anyway. You can tell me if I'm wrong. But anyway, I've only seen it written down. A warrior with the Thracian Elven Hunter can be mounted in a White Lion chariot, can be given a Thracian Great Blade, get into the Lion Cloak and all the other stuff that White Lions would have. And then obviously they're then detailed in this bit as well with the armory and the magic items and stuff as well. So you can actually make a really fun themed army if you want to, which I think is good. And means that there's a lot of scope for people to use all the stuff that they had lying around. One thing I will say is that I think currently, if you're somebody who does not have access to old world miniatures, so doesn't have access to the old Warhammer stuff, I think it's quite hard for you to get involved unless you were looking to play one of the new armies like Britannia or the Tomb Kings. If you are somebody who has access to old miniatures, obviously this is perfect for you because you just need the books, and then you're away. You've got all the old models. You don't even have to rebase. You can just use regiment trays with larger footprints if you want to, or just if you're playing friendly games, don't even bother about doing the rebasing. I know they've said that the rules have been designed for the bigger bases, but I don't think it will make a massive difference, especially if you're just playing games with friends. The other thing I wanted to point out as well is that, well, as I say, I think it's quite hard for people to get involved with this if they haven't already got armies. If you do, fantastic. Dive in, have some fun, play with the new rules, see what you think, and the new army lists and stuff. If you are new, don't feel like you have to buy Games Workshop models to play the game. Especially if you're going to be playing with friends and stuff. You're not going to be going to tournaments and things, at Warhammer World or whatever. There's loads of stuff out there for fantasy armies when it comes to building them. You can buy from loads of different creators who do really amazing kits. Like Avatars of War, for example, do amazing Games Workshop-esque models, but that's only because Felix worked for Games Workshop, previously. But if you're looking to buy like a Dwarven army, there's some great options there. There's also all of the Oathmark stuff that is brilliant. It's like generic fantasy stuff, but you could easily use it to theme armies and bring them to the tabletop. So if you're looking for plastic and metal models, there are loads out there in the fantasy world that could help you build your armies, I should say. So don't feel pressured to have to go for the Games Workshop options, or indeed wait for them to come out. If you're coming into the old world fresh, I might do something in the future about other ways that you can build old world armies from different creators, just so that you can get an idea of what's available out there, I suppose. But let me know what you think on that front. What's quite nice though is I think they've done a good job with the books. It feels like a lot of love has gone into actually bringing these to life, and making them books that people want to have. I mean, as a Warhammer fan, a Warhammer Fantasy fan, my like true love, this has been great. I will say there are some weird things in the books. I don't know if I can find it now. There are some printing errors in places, which is a bit of a shame considering I wanted these as a wonderful tome to show off. But can I find it now? Probably not. I think it's in the main rulebook actually. It's a bit of a quibble, but it's nothing massive. But yeah, I think they've done a solid job on this collection, and I just hope it goes from strength to strength and people dive in and have fun with it. There are loads of obviously very good fantasy war games out there anyway, so you don't feel like you have to go for the old world. But if you are a fan like me, then I'm sure you'll be tempted to dive in and give this a go and see what you think. Anyway, no point me just flicking through this trying to find the things I was trying to show you, because it's going to take me forever. So I will leave it at that, and let me know what you think in the comments down below. Have you got involved in the old world? Is it all you thought it would be? Are you going to be going with one of the factions from these books, or are you going to be just breaking out one of the PDFs to play as Skaven or Vampire Counts or something in between? Let me know, and like, share, comment, do all that good stuff. If you'd like a little bit more of a breakdown of where things are going hobby-wise for me when it comes to the old world, I will update in a future video. As I say, I've got my old tools that I'm going to crack out and build into an army. Maybe around the 1,000, 1,200 mark or something, probably to begin with. Although I think I probably have a good 3,000 points, 5,000 points maybe of dwarves sitting in a box somewhere that I'm sure are going to get an outing at some point. But yeah, I'm kind of excited for where this goes and what they do with it. And I'm intrigued to see the take-up amongst the community as well. Hopefully it's not a flash in the pan. But yeah, before we go, even if you don't play the old world, even if you're playing 8th edition or 7th or 6th, and you're not going to buy the books, this is a good thing, because all of those old model kits will soon be available again. And that means they'll be available from resellers on eBay, Troll Trader and everything else like that, which means that the prices are going to go down, and you'll be able to build up armies of your old models to use in games like 6th or 7th or 8th edition or whatever as well. So in many cases, it's a little bit of a win-win. But yeah, I'm going to move on. I've been waffling for too long. Just excited to share the books off and stuff like that. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below, and I'll see if I can get you some answers. But otherwise, I'll move on to another video. Bye for now.